How to not be a Terf, what that? What is this acronym? Trans-exclusionary radical feminist. Firstly, the acronym, according to internet lore, was created in 2008 just as a means of having a handy-dandy term to describe a certain kind of person. I mention this mostly because it is possible that the acronym may not be well thought out, such that the individual meanings of the words of the acronym may or may not be reflective of the group they are attempting to describe. For our purposes though, we're going to be taking for granted that the individual words do in fact point to the relevant groups and issues. In which case, we can understand trans-exclusionary as referring rather specifically to the practice of excluding trans women from feminine spaces, and in part more narrowly defined, from feminist spaces. Note that trans men are not really being referenced here. To wit, when referring to the boys, trans men are simply included. There isn't the boys and then the trans men, there is just the boys. Trans women, however, are not being so easily included, lexiconically, pragmatically, or indeed, in much of any way. Radical feminist is a technical term that refers to a specific set of feminist theories and theorists who primarily had their heyday back in the 1970s, but occasionally reared their heads thereafter. Perhaps much to the chagrin of everyone else. I am not much of a fan of this group. While I won't present this as the entirety of the theories or the theorists, I will present this as a fair and reasonable characterization of both. Their notion is essentially that the problems of gender equality are irreconcilable. To them, men are a fundamental problem that simply cannot be actually dealt with. This is why they are radical, that word meaning going to the root of the problem. To these folks, that means going to men as being fundamentally problematic, perhaps flawed, but definitely essentially something. Hence, they tend to be gender essentialists. Their views are predicated upon there being something essential about men, and because of that essentiality, they tacitly or explicitly hold that there is also something essential to being a woman. Their solutions, academically and pragmatically, have been towards the segregation of society predicated upon their notion of gender essentialism. To them, there isn't really anything good about society with men. They've sympathies with political lesbianism, and a wide variety of sex-negative views that hold that all heterosexual sex is rape. I don't think it is much of a stretch for folks to gather as to why these kinds of folks might tend towards the exclusion of trans women. They check off all the boxes. I am here going to make the claim that such a view is inevitable via radical feminism, where that term is being understood in its relevant academic sense. Not I'm a radical revolutionary, and I am also a feminist, but rather, I believe that the problems with gender equality are essential, and the only real solution is some kind of strict segregationist measures. Oh, and I am also a feminist or something. If you're a feminist of any other stripe, any other sort or set of opinions on the matter, that is, other than a segregationist, you ought to exclude the excluders. Do not tolerate the intolerant. The radical feminist academic view is fundamentally flawed. There isn't a real possibility to include trans women for these folks, because it goes against the essence of their theories. Indeed, it largely feeds into a wide variety of other sorts of deeply bad views, like racial essentialism, biological essentialism, etc. Folks attempting to hang on to radical feminists, or split the difference, hoping to maintain the radical feminists while ditching their trans-exclusionariness are at best just kidding themselves, at worst they are themselves segregationists attempting to avoid the inevitable. Regardless, they are actively harming feministic group cohesion. Those folks, the radical feminists, have just gots to go. What that means theoretically is to essentially, pun intended, denounce radical feminism, to repudiate it in the academics of it especially, to teach it as one might teach about racism or bigotry. It is a bad view. In the pragmatics of it, it means to not advocate for radical feminists' views. I don't necessarily want to go so far as to suggest that the automatic inverse is the correct view, as in total integration. But integration is the order of the day. Watchwords to scrutinize are such things as a woman's spaces and the various fearful dispositions that hold one way or another that the men sees are predators, the women's needs all the protection, and that there is some kind of problem of threat to women if they merely be in the presence of men. Safe spaces is code for segregated spaces, a coward's retreat.